We're gonna dive in behind the scenes of the largest AV show in the world.
A lot of times people are using, some things, some sexy stuff. I call them glitter.
It looks like a printed paper. It really does not look like a screen.
The right message at the right time, the right space.
I'm Dimitris, this is Vangelis. And before we begin, I've always wanted to ask you, how do you introduce yourself?
So my title is CEO and co-founder. It has always felt, too big for, at least my personality. So I usually introduce myself as, leading the team at Yodeck. And I did so, when we were 3 people, and I'm doing it now, that we're 170.
So yeah, I couldn't imagine, you going and introduce yourself. Hi, I'm the CEO. And also, I'm seeing that the smaller the role, usually, someone says I'm the specialist on that and the other, and then after a while, once you get to the C levels, people say I'm in the tech industry or I do software, right? Things like that.
When my mother asks me, I tell her I'm a developer, and that solves everything.
I see. By the way, how long is it that you have not written code? How many
So
years?
When we launched Yodeck back in 2014, we actually started working on Yodeck in 2014. I was writing code, and I think I stopped at about 2017, something like a year after our first customer came on board. I was doing everything else. So we have, 3 or 4 developers back then at that time. And I was doing everything else besides, actually writing code.
And do you miss that? Do you miss writing?
Life was simpler back then, for sure. But to be honest, I'm not missing it in my daily life. It's been a while.
So today's topic, we're gonna dive in behind the scenes of the largest AV show in the world. That's of course the ISE, Integrated Systems Europe. So this was my second time going to the ISE, but that was if I'm not mistaken, the 5th time we go there as Yodeck. So the first one was in 2022, I think. Is that right?
Yes.
And of course, you've been there all years. What's the difference? So what's different from 2022 and this year?
So first of all, we're a much smaller company back then, right? So, and we actually sent over a smaller team because we actually had a much smaller booth. Also back then, it was just after COVID, which meant that there was a lot of unused space, low pricing, low cost.
Nice.
So it was a different world back then. Now, the expo has gone really, really big. We now send over something like 18 people in total, along with our marketing people, our product people that are checking out, what the industry is doing. So overall, it's a kind of a different, motion for us. Back then, we were something like 30 or 40 people.
We were 30 people.
Overall.
I see.
Now, we're 170. So back then, it was a big thing for us. Now it's just, the expo that, a small part of the company, goes there.
I see. And having 30 people, I mean, those who went, it was probably a large percentage of the team, right? So even if 5 people went to the IC, it was like
of course,
a large percentage of the team. Different times.
100%. And, to be honest, I was actually at the booth also, in the first, 2 or 3. I was actually there, connecting with people, connect with all of the partners, and actually, grabbing, passing by, traffic and guys, picking them up and pulling them in, to start a conversation. Now, I do a little bit more strategic and more selective, discussions because, the team is bigger now.
Makes sense. And this year we had a lot of partner meetings, right? So scheduled meetings with existing partners. I think it was almost 50.
You're right. So back then, we were not just smaller in headcount, but our branding and our business was also smaller. We might had, 1/5 of the revenue, the size that we have, today. So now it makes much more sense for us, to attend an event like that and have a big booth because we have the brand, we have the gravity as a business in the industry in order to attract and have, really good conversations and have, as you said, scheduled meetings with partners, with prospects. So it's really important now.
Another thing that stood out is that those conversations, they don't stop at 6 o'clock, right? A lot of business happens after 7 p.m. So there are dinners, there are events, which of course they're very enjoyable. What's your take on that?
It's really important, to connect and in person with a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people. Most of the business that we do nowadays, and I think it's the same, with any software company, is done online,
Mm.
right? So having the opportunity to meet someone in person, share, a dinner
Mm-hmm.
or a drink, and connect with them, I think it's really important because on the one side, you create rapport with these people, and the second, you understand them better in more depth
Mm.
compared, to just having, 1 hour call.
Yeah.
We have seen that, also, in expos, of course, like ISE, but we were also seeing the same thing, the same effect when it came to tours that we did with our product managers, visiting customers and partners at their countries or, at their premises or
Mm.
installation sites. You get a different perspective when you sit down with someone, for 2 or 3 hours and discussing, through what are, their concerns, their needs, where, do they feel that we're bringing in, the value to our
Mm-hmm.
partnership. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you might have spent a lot of hours working with someone, or you have done a lot of business with someone, and maybe working for years and spent countless hours on video calls. So you've never seen them up close, and IC might be the only time that you meet someone, right?
You're right. You're right. So, with Cornell, one of our oldest partners since,
Mm.
2016, 10 years now, the only, place that we have managed, to meet in person is actually at ISE in
Mm-hmm.
Barcelona. So it's a great opportunity, to meet people there and, build, really long-term partnerships and relationships.
I think you have and you mentioned in one all hands in a meeting we had the story about the first customer, right? I
Mhm.
think you never met the first customer, you never talked with them. What was it?
It's a very interesting story. When we created, the platform, we always had in mind, going direct and going, self-service. So the first customer was actually someone that we never talked
Mm.
before, they bought, or even after. I really tried hard to get them on a phone or on a call, and they never came. It was really interesting because it was a diner in the middle of New York State,
Mm-hmm.
in the middle of nowhere, and I remember us connecting on Google Earth back then or Google Maps and checking out through Street View
Mm.
and actually seeing the place and trying to see photos of the place and stuff like that. So it was very interesting. But to your point, with the first customers, we never saw them in person. The first time that we met, someone in person was when we actually had our first customer in our HQ in
Mm-hmm.
Greece, and we had, the chance to connect with them in person.
I see. Super interesting. Also, another thing that made a big impression of me. So last year, and I was a very very new hire. I thought that partners and direct customers would be about 50-50 in ISC. That's not the case at all, right?
You're right. So, in ISC, we're seeing, mainly partners, so mainly integrators or AV integrators
Mm-hmm.
or IT, resellers, distributors. These are, the typical profiles of people visiting, the expo. We do have a little bit of customers, direct customers, visiting us at the
Mm-hmm.
booth, but these are, something like 5%. The rest, 95% is around, reselling and distribution.
I see. So almost everyone is a company that is getting digital signage to resell it or to not to use it directly. So that's almost all the audience in
Yeah.
AC
And it
due
could
to
be
that.
also it could also be MSPs, managed
Mm-hmm.
service providers. So even if they're actually not reselling, the software itself or the service itself, they are bundling it and
Mm-hmm.
providing it a complete service, to their customers.
So I think this year compared to last year, I saw a lot of, and even before the show, everyone mentioning AI, right? It's the most common buzzword. Everyone mentions AI all the time, and I'm a huge fan. But I think that it's a bit early on our industry. I don't know how many actual applications we have in the digital signage industry. What do you think?
I think that you are right. With any kind of software, these days, you have to have an AI story, right? So I saw at ISC, I saw a lot of software companies doing POCs, or, using the word AI, but actually being, more ML, machine learning,
Mm-hmm.
and less about generative AI, or, doing POCs that they actually haven't actually integrated into their platform. It's just, proof of concepts. A lot of times it feels like, it's kind of early in
Mm-hmm.
our industry. Historically speaking, our industry is not the fastest
Yeah.
in adoption of new technology. It's a kind of an old industry, right? And we have
Mm-hmm.
to acknowledge that it's something like 30 years now
Mm-hmm.
since the first platforms got traction. So I feel that there is room in order to grow more, and there is room for adoption, and for sure this is something that we are also pioneering on ourselves as well in our platform. But still, things are going a little bit slow.
I see. And on the topic of real world application versus fancy stuff, I also think that this year we had a lot more actual applications and how digital signage helps a business instead of just having the wow effect and impressive displays.
You're right. So a lot of times people are using, some things, some sexy stuff.
Mm.
I call them glitter features or glitter screens, things like that. So they use that, to attract and attract attention or lure interest and visitors. When actually people are just deploying large format displays and LED walls, and that's the blunt truth. On the other side, it is always important to try and stay to the edge of what the industry currently provides, but still a lot of that is still glitter.
So I think sometimes for example YouTube, right? So in the beginning YouTube was a platform you could get hobby videos there and videos that are not super relevant, and then it has grown into a real channel that very large companies spend a lot of money and get real customers. So it matured as time passed by. Do you think that digital signage is in that path, so it goes to a very mature state?
Overall the industry is mature, but the
Mm-hmm.
interesting thing is that it is growing overall. If you check in any kind of market research, you will see that everyone says that the digital signage software industry will be growing 2 digits
Mm-hmm.
growth for the next 10 years or so. So, and that's interesting because it's actually growing both ways, both sides. So it's growing downwards with more and more small businesses and new entrants, using, technology like that. But it's also growing on, the higher end of the market, with more and more enterprises identifying the need to communicate within, their premises with the most important audiences there. So this trend is starting, to make it more mainstream, let's call it. And the second also, another observation is that when you look at companies like Japan, for example, where screens prevail in especially, in towns like Tokyo, you can see, the potential for, the Western countries and especially, the European area where, we don't see that effect so much. I think that while, the industry is mature, the market is growing so fast that we will start seeing it more and more frequently in our daily lives.
Yeah, I think maybe a metric, sort of, an empirical metric is every town has the central road, right? So if you walk down the central road and you think a few years back, how many screens there are, so they really grow, right? So I did that, and I remember that a few years ago in Athens, for example, in the main road, you didn't have that many screens. Now they're almost everywhere. So you can see that as each year grows, as each year passes, you see more and more screens on the retail stores, for example. That's something that we see all the time.
You're right. People, especially as you said, retail, they need to differentiate, compared, to e-commerce. The huge thing that we have, with e-commerce is that you have all of your stock being available, for you to check out, while you don't have, that in retail. So, having screens allows you, to augment that experience with, things that you might not have, on the storefront, or you might not have, within, the store. So you're right. A lot of businesses in retail, but even outside retail, are using screens in order, to improve the experience within a physical space.
And that's also, for example, a manufacturing company, right? So someone that has a line of production, they have no way to talk to their employees. So a screen solves that issue for them.
And we actually saw, that effect, that need, being really amplified during COVID and especially after COVID. We saw, big manufacturing companies having, the need to communicate with their frontline workers, but not actually having an effective way, to do that. So screens provide, with that way to push information to your workforce and not, wait, send over, through, I don't know, email, Teams, or, employee apps, and waiting, for the employee to pull in information, and messaging from that. With screens, you can push information to your workforce, and it makes it much more powerful and much more engaging.
Yeah, you display exactly what you want, where the employee already is. You don't have to have them change something that they do.
The right message at the right time, the right space.
Now, speaking of screens, I saw a lot of LED or transparent screens. Can you call that? Can you call them that? Transparent screens and e-paper as well. What's your take on that type of hardware?
Some of that is glitter. I don't know, around transparent LEDs. I don't know, what's the actual use there. Perhaps, in storefronts. I don't know. It's kind of weird. E-paper is an interesting case. Last year's ISE was all about e-paper. We saw a lot of vendors and a lot of, concept and applications there. This year, it was a little bit tuned down, but actually we saw more commercially ready applications.
Exactly.
So things that, were displayed as proof of concept last year, now being, ready to use products from reputable vendors. So with e-paper, our partners at Sharp have done an amazing job. We're working, with them closely in order to enable Yodeck to also be able, to work with the paper screens, from that specific vendor. And we're seeing, this kind of pattern that, there are a lot of companies trying, to make actual applications of these types of technologies. Because up until now, it was kind of expensive, kind of, custom projects and custom designs. Now we're seeing this, trying, to get a little bit of that mainstream we talked earlier about.
I see. And if you see an X screen up close, I don't know if someone has not seen one, it's really, really impressive. The first time you see it, it looks like a printed paper. It really does not look like a screen.
Yeah. And it has, specific applications, which makes it, really powerful. For example, in direct sunlight, it's unbeatable. Whenever, you have an issue, around power. So having, the screen being powered by a battery pack and having it, without any cables or whatever, it makes it, much more convenient. So a lot of applications that are making it, really interesting.
So there's a much larger ecosystem of partners for Yodeck. It's not just someone reselling. So what would you consider as a Yodeck partner? What actually makes someone a Yodeck partner?
Up until, perhaps, a couple of years or 3 years back, we were focusing around partnerships from a transactional perspective. So distribution, resellers, white label resellers. We were viewing around how can we reach more of our market through distribution. Now we are viewing partnerships in an even broader way around how can we partner up with other software vendors so that we can do amazing integrations and provide, some value add, services or experience, to our customers. We're seeing also partnerships with display vendors where we're doing, deep integrations like Sharp, Sony, and others, and being able, to provide an even better experience to end customers and partners. Plus, vendors like Amazon, for example, where, they're providing a digital signage player, purpose-built, for digital signage and supported by Amazon. And we have partnered up with Amazon something like, a year or even more now, making it, available to our customers as well.
Yeah, the Amazon Signage stick, right?
Yes.
And this year in ISE, Amazon was also at our booth, and that was a
Mhm.
really nice experience. It was really great being able to talk to customers with Amazon and explaining the benefits and how this can help their business from all sides. That was really interesting for us
Mhm.
as well. Another thing I want to mention is that I have personally seen partners doing the best when they're building services on top of technology, right? So not only reselling digital signage, but also doing services that complement the actual digital signage. Is that what you think as well?
100%. So the main value that we bring to our partners is, the software, the platform, the support, the building, what's needed for a successful project. On the other side, our partners are bringing in the services that they can provide. And this can be, not just reselling, of course,
Mm-hmm.
but also add-on services, on-site support. We have partners that are providing a completely managed service. These are MSPs, managed service providers, and they provide the turnkey solution for the customer, bundling everything: software, hardware, on-site support, everything under a single price tag, and making it, super easy, for customers, to adopt
Mm-hmm.
technology like this. And of course, we shouldn't forget that there are industries, and especially, in enterprise accounts, where you need someone to implement the solution. If we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about, education or manufacturing, these are industries where a lot of times a partner could be considered a kind of a luxury, perhaps, because they can implement, the solution internally. But, there are industries and verticals like retail or, quick serve restaurants, hospitality, where, in these industries, you actually need someone to provide, a complete solution, because these types of businesses at large scale, they can implement, the solution internally.
So that usually happens also when a company is larger, right? An enterprise
Yes.
level
So
company.
you're right. So if you're, the shop around the corner,
Mm-hmm.
a burger joint, having, 2 or 3 screens, you can likely, if you're a little bit, tech savvy, you can get, your screen and deploy it yourself, or, just have, your IT guy do it for once. But if you're actually a big chain of burger joints and, have something, I don't know, like 50 stores, you most likely want someone to take on, that project for you.
Makes sense. All right, I think we're right on time. Is there anything else you would like to say to AV companies or IT companies or any company that's a potential Yodeck partner?
For sure, we are expanding, our portfolio of
Mm-hmm.
partnerships. So we are constantly on the lookout to onboard and partner up with amazing companies that provide turnkey solutions to our customers.
Mm-hmm.
We are operating globally, by the way. So this is also, really important, and we want to strengthen our partner presence of our network. I mean, across the globe, much broader that we are, today. So, and I think that we are bringing a lot of value to partners. So I think it's a great timing for someone that is considering if, Yoda could be a good choice for them to check out, our website and come in contact, with our team.
Excellent. And I think that many times partners already have the customers, and it's often that partners come to us because one of their customers has requested Yodeck. That's one of the things that happens the most, right? So many partners already have customers that would love to use Yodeck and do digital signage, but it just takes a little push from their side for that to
You're right.
happen.
You're right. You need that kind of a nudge. And when we have, that kind of, we have something like tens of thousands of customers globally, right? And that's growing constantly. That gives, the nudge to a lot of, MSPs or integrators to come over and say, okay, I got a request from our customer. You seem, to have something really interesting going on here. Let's talk about, a partnership.
Excellent. So I think we're right on time.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Dimitri.
you so much, and we'll see everyone on the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you.